Mr. District Attorney, how are you, sir?
Good, and yourself?
I'm doing really well, thanks. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm really honored to have you on. You've been doing incredible things. Don't know if you had a chance to catch the program earlier, but I was pointing out that you're unique in the fact that you're a career prosecutor. That you were appointed by the governor because of the changes that went on, but you're not really I wouldn't think you're a politician. You're a career prosecutor, right? You've been in that office under a couple district attorneys.
Yes, I started almost 30 years ago under Ron Pena. Worked for about 2.5 years, and then I worked with Paul Walsh for about 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. I did leave the office for a period of time, about 10 years, went out on my own, and I came back under former DA Sutter as a first assistant, and going on 11.5 years with the first assistant, and then were fortunate enough to be appointed the DA. So I've prosecuted people in murder cases and defended them also.
Well, I guess we're glad to have you on this side of the prosecuting table. So you came into this job appointed by the governor, and was right into one of the biggest trials going on in the country at the time, maybe since OJ, I think, Aaron Hernandez.
That's correct. Hernandez was just starting. In fact, the jury selection was within days of starting. Initially was appointed by Governor Patrick, who was had just finished up his second term. Then Governor Baker was sworn in. So it was an interesting period of time as to what was going on. And I didn't know what my status would be, but I did get a lot of support in the community, which I'm grateful for, and was appointed by Governor Baker Polito administration, and I again thankful for that. And Hernandez started that week and ended about 3.5 months later with a conviction. It was a great job by our trial team, who really sacrificed a good part of their lives for 2.5 years or so to bring about what was a just result.
It's a extremely interesting case because a lot of people at first speculated that there's no way your office would convict on that case, and yet your team was able to do it.
Well, we have some of the best prosecutors in the state, and that's not just the manager saying it for the troops. I mean, that trial team, Bill McCarthy, Pat Bomberg, in particular, tremendous prosecutors who have dedicated a lot, significant parts of their lives to prosecuting cases effectively, holding people accountable if the evidence warrants it. And I couldn't even begin to tell you the sacrifices that have to be made to do a good job in these cases. And, I think we're going back to, June of 2013. From that day on, I remember Bill had to cancel a family trip going with his wife and going to a conference. So just grateful for the sacrifices and also the top shelf performance, which brought about a conviction. I was confident that he would be convicted, assuming, the majority evidence got in. You're right, a lot of people didn't think so. The celebrity status is a big factor in these cases,
right?
Especially with it was right at home was the New England Patriots, which were riding high. But I think in the end, the jury, he was judged as a man and held accountable for his actions. And I think it was an appropriate verdict based on the evidence.
Now, of course, then ultimately the verdict was vacated.
Well, yes, we had an interesting series of events. You probably could do a show for several hours on this, but he was convicted. I think it was April 15th. You know something? What's today?
The 13th.
Approaching the third anniversary. I think it's the 15th.
Yeah,
Greg. So what is that? That's Sunday. So Sunday will be the third anniversary. It's funny, I was out the night before. The jury had been deliberating several days. I'll just say this quickly. And the person said to me, he's not gonna get convicted. I said, I think he's going to get convicted. They're out. Jury's not, to use the term, going to walk him, meaning let him go.
Okay. They've
been deliberating, conscientious jury, and then the next morning, 11 o'clock or so, they convicted him. But yes, so there's an appeal process that started, but in addition, he had been charged in Suffolk County, Boston, for a double homicide, which is really an assassination of two, young men just having a good time out at night. And that trial took place. He was held on our case, and that trial played out, and he was acquitted about a year or so ago in April. And then several days later, he killed himself in his cell. So that set off the motion to dismiss the case, which has been the standard practice, is while the case is on appeal,
Right.
the court will case should be dismissed based on it's not a constitutional issue, but it's just this practice that's developed over the years called abating the conviction.
Okay.
I think that's run its course.
Okay.
We are appealing that.
Okay.
Matter may be addressed later this year. He was convicted by a jury. He presumptively had a fair trial.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, that conviction should stand, or the appeal could be done. Been several other high-profile cases years ago, murders, vicious, brutal murders. John Salve at the abortion clinic.
Sure.
He died in prison, and his conviction was vacated. And I think it was a Shane judge in Plymouth County. Same thing happened. I'll say that's passé, that doctrine.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at this, every case, this particular case, tremendous amount of effort went into this case.
Sure.
Money, resources, investigators, prosecutors. Judge presided over it, made rulings, allowed evidence in, didn't allow evidence in. He's convicted, and the family obviously has a stake in it. They participate in the trial, grueling for them. And to have the whole thing wiped out like a snap of the fingers
Right.
is not right, based on an antiquated doctrine
Right.
that really doesn't serve any interest other than saying a defendant's case is on appeal, it should be dismissed. So it doesn't, it's time for that to change. Now, beyond, I think I'll leave it at that, because we are appealing it, and we'll let the court make that decision. But I do feel strongly that it's time to move on from that doctrine.
Yeah, it's a real shame for the family, what happened there. But I thought it was just a tremendous introduction to the public that when you took over the office and then you guys won this high-profile case, what a significant statement that was about your team and the team that you have over there at the office.
Well, I agree, and I thank you for that. I think it was, and it's about doing the job. That's my party, is doing the best job we can. We have there's a lot of activity in this county. That's as high profile a case as you're going to get. I mean, I had been there for 3 months. After the verdict, I'm standing outside. There's 150 people there. It's all, at least all over the country, so it's a little awakening for me.
Sure.
But I agree. But I think it
Look, when I'm watching you on ESPN, I know it's a big story, right?
Yes. And then so everybody has their so-called 15 minutes of fame, I guess. But I think whoever saw that trial, and many did on TV and were there, saw that we had the prosecutor was very effective, and it put our office in the spotlight, and they delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, that's one of the big high-profile stuff, and those fortunately don't come along that often. But it's the day-to-day stuff that you're doing over there. One of the reasons I want to get you in here is, of course, we have an audience with if they themselves aren't elderly, they have parents that are elderly, and one of the most horrendous crimes, I think, is elderly abuse and the financial crimes that are done to elderly people. Mr. District Attorney, talk about what you're doing in your office to help the elderly.
Well, it became clear, or even clearer, that there's a significant amount of elder fraud going on. Stealing from the elderly in different ways, abusing them physically, which has gone on, but I mean, that's obviously outrageous. But the elderly are a precious commodity to us. Our parents, our grandparents, they've made this country what it is in the latter part of their lives. Health is always an issue to all of us, but they shouldn't be, at least have to be worried about family members or scam artists stealing from them. Right. So I have created a unit and put resources into investigating and prosecuting elder fraud and also other financial crimes. I have a head of that unit, Attorney Mike Scott, and I've hired and put resources into it. Two-pronged approach. Investigate criminal conduct, and if we feel it's a crime there, we're bringing charges. We have brought a significant amount of charges in cases and held people accountable in some form. And also prevention. I have gone out to every senior center and other senior venues and agencies at least once to discuss how you can prevent this fraud from occurring. scam artists are everywhere. The IRS calling, grandparent scam. In a nutshell, don't get involved with these people. Hang the phone up and tell them the DA said so.
Okay.
Because once you give the money, it's gone.
It's gone.
And most of these cases can't be prosecuted if you're giving to somebody who's calling from Arizona or Libya or Pakistan.
Right.
So prevention is critical. However, when we come across matters that involve stealing from family members, which is most prevalent, or someone who is providing assistance to the elder, if it's a home health aide or somebody like that who gets access to the finances and steals them, we'll investigate and prosecute those cases. It's a poor woman who was in her 90s, had about $200,000 taken from a home worker. She's since deceased. She'll never get that money back.
No, she'll never get it back.
Grandfather, a grandmother being conned by the grandson. Somebody saying the grandson was in jail. You got to give this money to get him out, up to $40,000. And he was. I went and had him arrested in North Carolina, and had him brought back, and he was held accountable. It's not pleasant for the family members, but should they be subjected to this? No is the answer. So I think we've made great progress there. It's not an easy issue to delve into because you got family members.
Right.
People don't want to go against their son or daughter, which is understandable. They love them. Or grandson. But in the end, they shouldn't have to be subjected to that. So I think we made great strides with that. It seems to be well received. It's not glamorous in the sense of it's a lot of, in the trench work. You got to get bank records, but it's been well received. We're making progress and holding people accountable, and it's going to continue.
And so people here ought to know that if you're thinking about doing that, you're going to go up against the team that put Aaron Hernandez in jail, right? With with all his expensive lawyers.
That's correct.
If you're stealing from grandma, you don't have expensive lawyers.
No. And the top people, we are of a like mind, and we, my top deputy, Bill McCarthy, who's involved with Hernandez, we are of a like mind. We see these cases. We have a good unit that is dealing with them. So that's correct.
The thing, though, so you're pointing about family members, and often, obviously, the family member's gone bad. That's why they're stealing from grandma. Maybe it has something to do with drugs. I suspect that's usually what it is. Talk a little bit about what you're doing to try to prevent that, and so to educate parents about how kids are hiding drugs right in plain sight.
Well, that's another aspect to, unfortunately, the many societal problems that exist today. But the drug addiction has always been there, certainly since the 60s. It's been exacerbated the last 5 to 10 years with the introduction of pills, the massive prescription of pills that has led people to get addicted, and then to pills, and then unfortunately have to go to heroin because of the high cost. But what the key to that is prevention, because when you get addicted to opiates or opioids, they're high octane drugs, powerful addictive drugs, so it can be tough to get off and cause people heartache. But we've implemented a couple of programs, one of which is hidden in plain sight, where a teenager's bedroom is recreated, and we bring it around to schools and different places. We've gone to the mall and City Hall, and it just shows how in a ordinary setup, teens can conceal their drug use. They can hide something in it. They can have a tennis ball and have something hidden in the tennis ball. Right. They can have a beverage can that's cut out and has things in it. They could have what appears to be a pencil sharpener with marijuana in it. And the parents, other than maybe some behavior, noticing, suspecting some behavior, would not see it. So I think that's been very informative to parents. It helps educate them, and no one is safe from this. It's not just someone in the inner city, especially with the pills. See, that's what's really changed it is I get prescribed pills, or excess pills are left in a medicine cabinet somehow, or I have an injury. I get pills. I get addicted to them. They cost $30 or $40 a pill, so when the prescription runs out, where do you get them? I'd have a tough time supporting a habit, and I'm making a pretty good salary. So they go to heroin, which is $5 a bag, and it's just a terrible cycle that has caused so much heartache. So I think we also are supporting a Corey's Cause, a young man who was an athlete, went to UMass Dartmouth to pitch, hurt his shoulder, pills, went to heroin, overdosed, could have or should have died, but didn't, but is impaired. because of it. But his parents have made something positive of it and have gone around the county. They were in at Diamond, I think, last week, and I think they're somewhere this week. Speaking to students, and it's not the DA speaking, because at some point the students, well, what do you expect them to say? It's someone who walked in their shoes, who has a powerful message, very impactful. So we support that. Financially, we have some funds we've put towards that. So I think we're doing practical things that can assist the community in being aware of a drug problem and addressing it. I've also pushed, I think almost every state police department has a drug drop-off bin. Okay. So you're given 50 pills, you use 2, you can go to the Haven Police Department and put it there, and it's disposed and destroyed. Right. That makes a difference because people have gotten addicted by having excess medication in the medicine cabinets. Yeah, we're speaking with District Attorney Tom Quinn. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Okay, welcome back, and as you've been listening to us, you know we have District Attorney Tom Quinn here in studio talking about the different programs he's doing. You know, we touched on the high-profile cases, the case that he was involved with Hernandez, but it's really the day-to-day stuff, and you're attempting to do prevention work, try to keep kids, because it's tough once they get hooked on drugs to get them off it, so if you can stop them ahead of time. Yesterday you had a very successful team safety summit. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah, that was our third annual, if you will, Teen Safety Summit that was held at the Venus de Milo in Swansea. It was a great crowd, about 400 students there from around the county. We had a guest speaker, Mr. West, a motivational speaker. I gave some opening remarks to them and just to indicate that we're trying to put this together to make you aware of things and help you out. There were a number of workshops on issues that they confront them as teenagers. And it's not easy being a teenager now. Maybe it wasn't easy 40 years ago, but it's tougher now. I think it's tougher now. I really do. One of the workshops was on vaping. So I said vaping. If you asked me what vaping was, I would say it was a vaporizer when you had trouble breathing. Right. Or Vicks Vapo Rub. Now it's cigarettes, and it's so there's a lot of temptations out there, the technology. And we touched on human trafficking, the drug addiction, prescription addiction, trying to stay away from it. So it's not easy, but I think talking to them, and I said at one point, this isn't so much, we see all this in the court system, but put that aside for your own well-being and your family's well-being. Families are being ruined by this. Right. Forget about the criminal stuff, unless you're, doing armed robberies, but just from your own life. Right. So it seemed to be well received. Again, it was a big crowd there. We're going to continue to do that. That's a way of getting the message out, looking for peers, young men and women or teenagers to be role models, not just say no, but to stand up and be an example. That was one of the themes of the summit. So I think it went very well. And again, it's getting our message out there of prevention. I mean, we're all human. You're going to make mistakes. I'm sensitive to young people making mistakes. It's always somewhat of a soft spot, because I realize, we're young, immature, fragile. Human nature's fragile, as long as you're not, doing some real bad things. So I'm sensitive to that, and we're trying to address it through prevention.
But for the grace of God, go I, right?
Well, in many cases, yes. I mean,
your parents.
I mean, a lot of things. I mean, some people don't have. Brought up, not the best of circumstances.
Right.
So you got to be sensitive to it. On the other hand, that's not a ticket to doing things that you're not supposed to. Right. So I think getting to people when they're younger, and you got to get them at a younger age, not just high school, but in at least the middle schools and even earlier than that. Right. So I think hopefully that summit will do that and make people aware of the pitfalls of many of these issues.
Well, time flies when you're having fun. I appreciate you coming in, Mr. District Attorney. Good luck this year. You're up for re-election, or up for election, re-election.
Re-election, yes. I seeking a first full-year term. I initially was appointed for 2 and then had to run for the balance of the term. But it's been, really a privilege and honor to serve, and I hope I can continue to do that.
I think you're going to be in good stead with the voters here in Bristol County. Well, thank you again for coming on in. I appreciate it. Hey, folks, Barry's coming up next, and I'll be in, God willing, I'll be here tomorrow. Enjoy the Red Sox tonight here on WBSM as well.